Good stuff trucks, bring it. That's how we live it. Nothing without trucking, it don't get there. Trucking moves America forward. Good stuff trucks, bring it. That's how we live it. Nothing without trucking, it don't get there. Trucking moves America forward. Truckers' voices howling through the night. Podcasts sharing the stories with delight. They got the best advice and always down to ride. Truckers' voices howling through the night. I met a trucker, I was at a truck stop. He gave me the truth, man, he had a whole lot. He said, I love my wife and I love my babies, but I gotta go and provide for my babies. And it's tough on my lady. He said, sometimes I see her once a week, sometimes I see her once a month, sometimes I see her once a year. He said, but she know I'ma hold her down. She know I got her back. She know I'm always gonna provide, cause I gotta get that bag. And it's tough on me too. You know, you out there, you out on that road. Man, you got nobody to talk to. You don't got nobody to give you no game. You got nobody to give you no knowledge. But you got these podcasts. They get me through my nights. They get me through my days. They get me through my months. They get me through my years. Truckers' voices howling through the night. Podcasts sharing the stories with delight. They got the best advice and always down to ride. Truckers' voices howling through the night. About the best advice and always down to ride. Truckers' voices howling through the night. Good stuff trucks, bring it. That's how we live it. Nothing without trucking, it don't get there. Trucking moves America forward. Good stuff trucks, bring it. That's how we live it. Nothing without trucking, it don't get there. Trucking moves America forward. They got the best advice and always down to ride. Truckers' voices howling through the night.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I hope everybody's doing this good this day. We're going to come straight into it. I got me and Steve here, and we're here with you tonight on a Thursday night, and we have got an awesome show lined up for you, just like usual. Steve, what do you think about the show we're going to be putting on tonight?
I think it's going to be a great show. And first of all, I got to say, I like the new theme song. It's awesome. I like it.
Well, look here. I am putting together something on some of this music that is ours. It's our music. And I'm going to put together something to where people can go and click on a link and listen to our music. So there's probably 10 songs on there that they could ride down the road and listen to, you know. So it's all Truckers' Voices music for sure.
It's got a good beat to it, man. It gets your feet tapping, you know, makes it posts go by quicker.
Absolutely. Well, we got a great show lined up tonight. We got Mr. Paul Sagehorn coming on here, and we're going to be talking everything BJ and the Bear and the truck that he found and restored. And I won't say much more about it, but we got a lot to get to tonight. But let me go ahead and throw this up here, and I'll let you go ahead and read that off for us there, Steve-O.
The views expressed on this show are those of the host and the guest only and do not reflect those of others.
Absolutely. Well, real quick, Steve, how was your day of trucking today? I know traffic was kind of heavy coming out of the Big A today.
I go to Pennsylvania 5 days a week, and Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, it got heavier and heavier. Today was fairly light. This afternoon, it got a little heavy. God bless y'all. Appreciate you for minding your own P's and Q's and keeping it in your lane and keeping it on the rubber side. They all did a good job.
Yeah, it was kind of heavy. It got heavy out of Atlanta, but everything went really well and went really good. And, if it can happen in the trucking industry, it will happen. And so Today was one of those days that, my hat's off to everybody that played pretty today.
Yes. And, those that kept the law enforcement busy, sorry about your luck, Should have lifted instead of gassed.
All right. Exactly. Yeah, I've seen quite a few blue lights out there for sure,
Yes, sir. And always remember, folks, move over. Always move over. It doesn't matter if it's a policeman, a fireman, a state worker, or even a broke down car. Move over.
Right. Well, I want to thank you, Steve, for getting with Paul when you was doing an event not too long ago and telling me about everything that you talked with him about, and that he's going to come on and talk about the truck and all that, and his experiences there. But man, I tell you what, we have had some great guests here lately, and I'm going to tell you, I'm going to go ahead and tease this. We got some great guests coming up in the near future too.
We do.
I'm
Yes.
not going to say who it is, but I will say this: this person's been in the trucking industry for over 51 years, has over 7 million safe driving miles.
It's going to be a good show. It's going to be a good show. There again, like to appreciate and say thank you to everybody that tunes into us. And tonight's show is going to bring back some childhood memories. It sure is, So
Yeah.
whenever you're ready to get started, buddy.
Well, let's go ahead and get started. I do want to tell everybody, please stay with us to the end. I've got something special at the very end, and you just got to stay with us to figure out what's going on at the very, very last part of the show, okay?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. Well, everybody, let's bring on here Mr. Paul Sagehorn. Paul, how you doing tonight, brother?
I'm doing well. How are you guys?
Good, good. Where are you coming to us from tonight? I see you in the cab and in the sleeper of a truck there. So tell us a little bit about where you're coming from.
Yeah, I'm actually at home. I'm in the cab of the BJ and the Bear truck, sitting in my shop. So,
Absolutely
appropriate for the interview.
Yeah, most appropriate for sure. And I'm so glad you agreed to come on and talk with us. And man, I tell you what, one of my fondest memories was of the show BJ and the Bear. And I'm excited. I went back, I watched some of some of the videos on YouTube and all that. Actually watched a couple of the episodes, and I'm like, yeah, what I would do to be a kid again. But hey, you get to experience that all the time with that truck there for sure.
Yes, yeah, we have. We've had a good run with it, where we've had it to a lot of events and shows, and had a lot of fun with it.
Absolutely. Well, just go ahead and tell our listening audience we're out here on YouTube, and then we do have some people that's listening to us, on the upload of the podcast on iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. But tell us who you are, where you're from, and then we'll just jump right on into the interview, and we're going to just dig into this, and we're going to have fun tonight.
Yeah. Well, I'm Paul Sagehorn. I live in Sparta, Wisconsin. I am an owner-operator. I have my own authority. I've had it since 1999, and just that's what I've been doing.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we're gonna jump right on into it here. So Paul, what first drew you to the BJ and the Bear truck, and how did you absolutely become the owner of it? Just kind of tell us that story, and we're just gonna sit back and listen to it.
Well, like a lot of people my age, I'm 55, so a lot of people from my era watched the show when we were kids. I was 9 years old, and had the poster on my wall in my bedroom, and thought, well, that'd be cool to own that someday, never thinking it is actually a possibility. And we had a replica Kenworth that was painted just like it with a trailer to match, and we operated that for a number of years. And then in 2000, well, I don't remember the specific time, but the truck was found in Georgia by the owner of the truck came on to an MSN fan site and said he had it. And a couple of guys went down there, verified that it was actually one of the trucks. And I never really thought about it, even approaching the guy. It just didn't cross my mind. And my dad was in the area one day. He was getting ready to pick up somewhere near Douglasville, and he said, "Give me the guy's phone number. I'd like to call him up and meet him and go see the truck, see if he'll sell it." And I thought, why would you do that? We already have a truck. I look back on it now, how silly was that? And so we ended up meeting the gentleman, but he was late to the meeting. The gentleman was James, and so my dad didn't actually get to see the truck. So all we had to work off were the photos that we had seen. But he made him an offer anyway. A couple of days later, I talked to him on the phone. We ended up striking a deal, and probably 2 weeks later, we were down there picking it up. So
yeah. Now, go ahead, Steve.
No, go ahead, Tim. Finish
Well, I
it.
was just going to follow up on that, and I was going to say, let me get a little closer to the microphone here. I was just going to say, I seen some pictures of that where y'all picked it up in Georgia. It had weeds growing up through it and some other stuff. And if I remember right, some of the parts was out of the truck, but you got some of the original parts like the bumper and all that, right?
Yeah, it actually, surprisingly, for as long as it sat, which was around 20 years, he had all of the parts. He had the bumper, which still had the fog lights in it. The original steering wheel was in the truck. The seats, everything was here. The shrouds on the mufflers, which is usually they rust away, but they're still the originals. So really, it was more like a time capsule. He parked it and left it alone. Didn't steal a bunch of parts off it, and so he just gathered all of those parts up when we went to pick it up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I heard something on something else I was listening to, and it was saying that being in Georgia was a good thing, right?
Yeah, I feel it was because the weather, you get the rain and the heat, but the truck was its whole life spent primarily in the South, so it really didn't get exposed to a tremendous amount of salt, I don't believe, just because of the condition of the frame. It was, showed signs of age, but it's in remarkable shape considering how old it is.
Right, right. Go ahead, Steve.
Now, I got kind of a two-part question here for you. When you guys got it back to Wisconsin, was it a full restoration or did you kind of restore what needed to be restored, do a lot of cleaning? And then the second part of that question is, did you and your father do all the work or majority of the work? Did you have to, contract some of it out or?
It was a full restoration. The only thing we didn't take off the truck was we didn't remove the cab from the frame just because we didn't have the means to do that.
Right.
But every bolt came off the frame. We had the frame sandblasted. My dad spent endless hours sanding the cab down to bare metal, and it was in remarkably good shape. It really didn't need any kind of body work, maybe a few, dings here and there, but it was in quite good shape. And the frame we got sandblasted. Somebody else did. We didn't have the means to sandblast it, so they sandblasted it. Then we painted it. We did all the paint work ourselves. Did all the disassembly, the reassembly. Had a local guy help us put the engine in when it came time to do that.
Right.
So
So Paul, how long did it take from start to finish this project?
I get that question a lot because normally this would be a lengthy process, but we got the truck in 2007 in the summer. I think it was August, and the next January, I believe it was, I was talking to the people from a car show that's up here in Wisconsin. It's a pretty big car show. In fact, we're getting ready to go to it next week, and it fits right in with this era. So I got a hold of him and I said, hey, we've got a truck from the TV show, and I can also get the actor there. We can be a feature to draw people in if you'd like, and they agreed. And so we got to around March of '08, and we hadn't even started on the truck yet. The car show's in July.
Oh
So
wow.
I literally looked at my dad in this shop and I said, we better get going on this.
Right.
We got some work to do, and we did. We got started stripping it down. And once we got going, it wasn't, it was a lot of work. And when it came around June, we didn't even go to work at the hardware store that, the family business that my dad owned at the time. We just came to the shop and worked nonstop until it was ready to go, which was the night before we finally took it out of the shop and drove it for the first time. So
Yes. So tell us a little bit about your dad. I know that he's passed on, but tell us a little bit about your dad.
yeah, so he was the motivating factor behind all this, and he was not a trucker by trade, which everybody, when they saw him out in this truck, which he drove hauling freight. Now he didn't do it full time, but he did go out usually late August, early September, and he'd stay out for the whole month of September, all of October, usually around the first part of November or so. Whenever the weather might have started to change, I'd finally bring him home, or he'd want to come home. But he would go out and generate revenue with it. But he started a hardware store in 1976. We moved from Minneapolis to Sparta, where I live, and 5 kids and a wife, and bought a hardware store that was essentially going out of business. But he just had to make a change in his life, and he knew that's what he wanted to do. So that was our main uh, source of income and for what we did. And then I was in the Navy, and when I got out, I got my CDL, drove for around 2 years, and then I got married, and then I went into the hardware store so to work with my dad. And then after I got the replica truck in '99, he got his CDL. So he was 60 years old when he got his CDL, and everybody saw him, at in his older years, and they thought he was this old school trucker. And he's like, "No, I've not been doing this my whole life," but he enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And
That's awesome.
and the restoration part, we had restored multiple cars over the years, so that process, we were familiar with. This was just on a bigger scale, so we just needed a bigger paint booth in the building, and everything was on a grander scale.
Yeah, for sure. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, that was kind of, so you guys pretty much been restoring something quite a while. So
Yeah.
you kind of, you knew what was doing with the restoration part, but when it come to, okay, just out of curiosity, how was the rear ends, the transmission, the motor? How was all those mechanical parts?
Well, I'll be honest with you. The motor that was in it was junk. That was the engine block. It was all torn apart. It was sitting on the front axle, balanced on a piece of wood, hooked to the transmission. It wasn't even mounted, really. It just stayed there for the transport home. We knew we needed an engine, which is we got a used one to put in. Transmission and rear ends, I'll be real honest with that. We got so tight on time. We didn't have time to, take them apart and rebuild them. But you also have to remember the truck only had about 430,000 miles on it. So by
Right.
no means were they worn out.
Right.
And we, did the fluids and checked everything else and bolted it up and hoped for the best.
Okay, with that being said, I've got a mechanical question because this is a show truck. It's not a running truck, that you go out and run freight and run 4, 5, 6,000 miles or 20,000
Mhm.
miles a month or nothing. So it sets more than it actually rolls. What kind of maintenance do you do on it? Like some guys change the oil every 25,000, 15,000, maybe 50,000. How do you do that on the oil changes and the services and stuff?
Well, on this recently, since you're asking about my dad, so yeah, he passed away in 2022. So since 22, the truck has just been sitting. The trailer hadn't left the building in 6 years until I took it out for Madison. The tractor, I had gotten it out and drove it a little bit, but really haven't done much with it. When we were running it, we would change the oil at normal oil intervals and grease it just like a normal truck.
Right.
But when it's sitting, it's in a climate controlled building, so I don't have to, it's there's really not a whole lot I need to do. And I mean, it's an old truck, so yeah, it has a few leaks, but
Yeah.
that's pretty normal.
Right. Right.
Well, you got something else, Steve?
I was just going to comment about your dad. Sounds like he was always an innovator. He wanted to do projects. He owns a hardware store, so I mean, and you said he restored cars and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So this was just like a project for him.
Oh yeah, absolutely. A challenge. He loved a challenge. If yeah, you just put something in front of him and give us a deadline, because we had to have some pressure. He always said, most people work better under pressure, which is true.
Right.
And that hard deadline of this thing needs to be there, because they were advertising it, and you can't not show up with it with that kind of, and it's fairly close. It's only like 100 miles from here, so we did drive it over there. And I think the only thing we had trouble with was we lost a wheel seal on the
Right.
way. But again, we didn't have time to do we put new brakes and all that stuff on because we had everything apart, but some of it we just didn't get into at the time.
Right.
And so
Well,
Okay.
Paul, moving into the truck itself and BJ and the Bear and the show's legacy, what kind of impact do you think that BJ and the Bear had on the trucking industry as well as pop culture?
I think it was positive myself. I know a lot of people look at it and it was a silly TV show, the premise of it, but it was entertainment. That's what it was for. But one time when we were doing a show with Greg, I thought about this and I told him, I says, you got to realize, even though this seems like just it was a job for him, there's a lot of people my age that saw the show, got into trucking, supported a family, put kids through college, bought a house, lived a really good life because they got interested into trucking, whether it was Moving On or BJ and the Bear or
Right.
any other trucking movie or TV show. So it definitely in this world, it really holds up. When this thing, you take it somewhere, it gets a lot of attention and people genuinely appreciate seeing it. Has
Right.
been my experience.
Yeah, and I'll follow up on that question also. And you talked about Greg Evergon, and how did that connection come about as far as, you connecting with him?
Well, the first show we did was actually with our replica, and honestly, I can't remember how we initially got in touch with him. The truck show may have actually helped with that, or his assistant. I really don't remember. But once we made the contact, well, then it was direct phone calls between him and I, and occasionally, in the middle of winter, I'd be sitting in my chair at home watching TV, and all of a sudden my phone would ring, and it would be Greg, and he'd say, "Hey, it's Greg Evigan." I'd be like, "Yeah, I know," and he just asked, "What's going on? Do we have anything planned?" And so. But once we got to know each other, then it was a real good relationship of doing the events, and so.
Yeah, and I, that's got to be, somewhat of, pretty cool. What was his reaction when he first saw that truck that you got out of Georgia and restored? And what's it? I mean, him getting up in it, and does he get up and say, "Hey, I remember this, this, and this," or anything like that?
I believe it was like that, if I remember correctly. He was, I think he was pretty happy or impressed, and obviously it's not something he probably ever thought would happen. He would do autograph shows and things like that before he met us. But once we were able to get the truck, have him have access to it, and then we can do it together, then it really took off. It was really, really a good fit.
Oh yeah, no doubt. Go ahead, Steve.
I bet it brought back a lot of memories for him because, like, you're sitting in the truck now. I've never been to Hollywood, but he probably had to spend a lot of hours in that truck doing episodes.
Yeah.
So him
Yeah.
getting in that truck is like, wow, I forgot about this.
Right.
And it just,
Well,
I think that's cool.
he actually picked it up pretty quick because the first show we did was was Waupun, Wisconsin, and that was with our replica. And he ended up we weren't there 15 minutes, and he leaned over to me and he said, "Hey, you gonna let me drive the truck?" And I said, "Well, yeah, of course I want to, but we're in a truck show. Like, how are we gonna get out of here?" Well, then the guy with the parade comes up, says, "Hey, would you guys like to be toward the front of the parade?" I said, "Oh, here's your chance." And I was gonna have him. I was gonna go over some things with him, just to get him acclimated. And all of a sudden, the guy comes back and says, "Okay, it's time to go." So it was just, hope for the best. And he got through the parade pretty well. And then we didn't realize how we got back to the truck show grounds, where you have to go out on some highways, like in these little county roads, and there's no in a cab over. You're not switching. So
Right.
we were, we ground a few gears, or he did, but we were up to highway speed, and he was loving it. He was calling his wife and kids, and we were playing the theme song, and so yeah, it was. And then the following year we had this actual truck there, and then he got to drive that. So
That's pretty awesome right there.
yeah.
Yeah.
Do any fans ever come up to you and just like I did at the beginning of the show, say, "Hey, I remember that truck and I remember that show when I was a kid," and what's the emotions like when people see it?
That's pretty much the standard response, is if they recognize the truck for what it is and not just an old cab over, That's what they say. And then we'll let them sit in the seat. That's part of the whole thing is get in it, because there's no chance you ever thought you'd get in it, but here you go. And they are genuinely, what do I want to say, appreciative. They
Yeah.
appreciate the gesture, and it's I'd say probably a lifelong memory.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No doubt. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I was just going to say, whenever I seen you come into the show and I went over and introduced myself to you and talked to you about the truck, while you was talking to people, I'm walking around this truck and trailer and just saying, to myself, wow, this is the actual show truck.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't get to enjoy that,
Right.
and everything. But wow, that's
Yeah.
it's pretty amazing, and what you guys did with it, and the drive and the initiative that your dad had and you had to bring this thing together is totally fascinating to me.
Yeah.
I don't have the mechanical technology to buy something like this, and I might
Right.
be able to afford to buy it, but I don't know if I can do it or not.
Right. Yeah, it was quite a task. But we just took it one step at a time, and
Right,
failure was not an option. We knew we had to get it up and running, and
right,
so
right.
So Paul, just kind of tagging on to what Steve just asked you just then. Uh, you have one of the originals, but how many actual trucks were there?
that number is a mystery. There was at least five that you can pick out of different scenes and put together, but there's no record of the actual number. That Universal, just if there is one, nobody's come up with it, and it's been so many years. And you got to remember too, nobody thought 40 years ago we'd be doing this, talking about it, that these
Right.
things would survive, they'd be restored, people would be interested in them. So uh, five is kind of the number that's come up recently. There are two other ones. The twin to this is out east, and then the 78, the very first one, is also around. But other than that, we don't know where any of the other ones would be.
So the one that you have is a 1980 Kenworth, right?
Correct.
So what's the differences in the different trucks? I know for one thing, I know the headlights are different. So you want to talk about that in just a minute?
Well, actually, they all had round headlights because they were all, in that era. But the only real difference when you look at them, the paint scheme on the earlier one, they didn't come from the factory with this paint scheme, whereas this one was painted in Chillicothe,
Uh huh.
like it is. The first, at least the first one or two, were just white aerodynes, and they were painted presumably at Universal or somewhere else. Uh, the stripe on the sleeper, it goes up at a little steeper angle on the earlier models. So when you look at them side by side, it's real easy to see. Other than that, from 78, 79, and 80, there were probably a few differences with air tank placement or something that if you really get into the nuances of it, but um, for the most part, they look fairly similar.
Okay. All right. Go ahead, Steve.
Kind of a couple part question here. When you got into this and you started researching, I'm sure you had to make some connections in Chillicothe, make some connections out in Marston at the Kenworth, and maybe even Hollywood. Uh, how did all that come about, and what kind of reaction did you get out of folks when they're calling and tell your story of what you need to find out, and they're like, you want what?
Yeah, well, it's funny because again, this was in 07, 08, and the internet wasn't what it is today as far as searching. There was very little we could find, even photos. There weren't that many photos. I mean, I had the poster from my wall, that hung there, which was a good, you could look at the paint job, but there wasn't a whole lot else to do. Um, we worked with the Kenworth dealer in Madison as far as parts, but and I did eventually make a connection at the plant in Chillicothe with somebody that had worked there when this truck was built, and then he was in upper management, and he was able to help us in the later stages of just getting some of the history on it from the plant. But I wasn't able to get anything from the West Coast as far as that. I didn't really have any connections out there, so it was
Right.
whatever we could come up with or had knowledge of anyway.
Now, was all the trucks for the show built in Chillicothe?
Yes, as far as I know, they were all built there.
Okay. Okay.
So, Paul, tell us a few of the major shows like Mid America and so on. Tell us some of the shows that this truck has been featured at.
Well, when we used to have the truck show in Dallas, that the Great American Truck Show, we were there one year. Randall Riley actually sponsored us to be there inside, which we could never do that on our own just because it's so incredibly expensive that we
Right.
just couldn't do it. But they reached out to us and asked us if we'd like to bring that in the Moving On truck at the time when we owned it. We've had it at Walcott. I've been to that car show in Iola, Wisconsin, 2 or 3 times. We've been there. We've done 3 ATHS shows. We tried to get it to Reno. My dad was actually on the way to Reno when the engine decided to grenade itself in Nebraska, and he did not make that show. So the truck now has a new engine in it, but yeah, so we've had to a lot of those and a few other small ones, but those would be the major ones.
Gotcha.
Right.
So one more question about that, and then we're going to kind of move on, and I want to talk, a little bit about, the truck then and now. But I do have one last question about, you know, your shows and all that. So have you ever been approached about, or ever thought about doing a show, like just going across America and saying, here's the BJ and the Bear show, just kind of hitting major cities with it or anything? But like you said, I imagine that's pretty expensive.
Yeah, and the thing is, when my dad was alive, he was my guy to drive the truck. So I could commit to any truck show at any time. And if I was out doing, regular trucking or was committed to something, at least he could get it there. Whereas now, I just don't have that ability because most events you have to commit 6 months out. And for me to commit to something in January that's going to happen in July, I don't really know what my schedule is going to be. So
Right.
it's real tough to do that.
Gotcha. All right, go ahead, Steve.
Yeah. I guess, what was I going to say? I done lost my train of thought.
I threw him for a loop.
You threw me for a loop. I was just kind of putting everything together. But I'll just go back to a personal experience. You and I was talking in Madison, and I pulled up the pictures when I met you guys in Bloomington, Illinois, 15, 16, whatever it was. And you guys had the Christine replica
Oh yeah.
moving on truck. And you're like, hey, yeah. And but when I met your dad, he was super nice. And he told me, though, he says I'd really like to stick around and talk, but we've been gone for a couple of weeks and we're going home. And I said, yes, sir. Yes, sir. But this is just totally awesome of what you guys have done, what you put together, and you're continuing on. And I understand what you're saying. It's hard because you got to make a living. So
Right.
to try to schedule something way out in advance, it's kind of tough. You don't know what your schedule is going to be.
Yeah. And once you commit to it, you have to fulfill that. So it's just so tough to do it. And even the Madison show this year was real last minute, and I hadn't planned on going because I didn't know. And then after I somebody else had approached me and asked me about if I was going, and they were able to get me in there. So that's how that came about. And we're only 100 miles from Madison, so it worked out.
Right.
Yeah. So from back then in the 1970s, and when the show aired and all that, in your personal opinion, how do you think trucking has changed?
Well, quite a bit, obviously, with technology and that type of thing. I mean, I've been doing it since 91, 92, so it's evolved there since then with the e-logs, and like I say, just the trucks themselves have changed considerably.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, and we can learn a lot of things, and once a trucker, you're always a trucker, and no matter whether you're an automatic guy or you're shifting all 13 of them, and you're always going to be a truck driver for sure. And so, so what can somebody that's young, just getting into the trucking industry, what can they learn from shows like BJ and the Bear and older trucks like the Cabovers and all? What do you think they can learn?
Boy, I don't know, because if I had to drive this thing every day, I don't think I'd do it. It's cool to get it out and go through the gears again, I don't know how my dad did it. I mean, he drove up until he was like 78, or it was almost 80, that he was driving this thing. And I took this thing, 200 miles round trip, and I was like, man, I don't know how he did it, and he enjoyed it. And it wasn't, he didn't, he didn't grow up in the industry, but I don't know, to answer your question is kind of tough. I kind of like my new Volvo with my technology and smooth ride.
With your electronic login device and all that.
I don't mind that myself. I'm fine with that. But yeah, I mean, the business itself, has changed in some ways, and there's just a lot of different aspects to it. But I mean, the concept is the same. You're picking up and delivering, so
yeah, for sure.
Kind of to play on that, you told me at the show what you had for a truck now, and the difference between a cab over and a conventional is just like daylight and dark. But with all the new technology on the new trucks and everything, and I don't know what all technology you have, but how is it to get back in that truck? Full mechanical motor, 13 speed, throttle down. I mean, and then you get back in your truck and you got this comfortability. And I mean, you touched on that a little bit, but how is it to get behind the wheel of that? There's no computers.
Well, it's I think most people would say you don't ever forget it, the shifting and all that. That's just
right.
It just comes right back to you naturally. So other than this being a cab over and the fact that your visibility out the right side is horrible just because of the pure design of the truck, but it for what it is and when it's time, it was pretty luxurious at the time. You can stand up behind the seat, put your pants on standing up, and it was pretty cutting edge at the time. And when you have a loaded trailer on, it actually doesn't ride that bad, but it doesn't obviously compare to a new truck. But
but like I was saying, you're getting back into a non-computer, fully mechanical. Is that a big change when you first take off? It's like, wow, this thing, it doesn't.
Not really. I mean, it's just, again, it just comes back to you. And I actually started in a cab over, so I'm familiar with it. But so I think it's one of those things you just don't forget, and comes back pretty quick.
So, okay, what's one of your most memorable fan reactions that just kind of pop straight into your mind that when they see the truck?
One thing that sticks out to me is when we did one of those at the car show in Iola. We had a family from Kentucky that drove all the way to Wisconsin just to see this truck.
Wow!
And the cool part about that is, in 2018, the years I can't remember. Whenever we did the Lexington truck show, that family showed up again.
Wow!
And this had been several years. That was probably like 10 years later or so. I don't remember, but they showed up. So that was a neat fan reaction. There was another guy at Madison that had shown up in, I think it was in Lexington. He came from Chicago just to see the truck, and he was in Madison. Obviously he's much closer, and I remembered him once I started talking to him.
Right. Yeah.
So it's interesting, the people that you end up meeting.
I'm going to let Steve take the next question, and I have one last question for you. Then we're going to move on to our next guest that we're going to bring on here in just a few minutes. But go ahead, Steve.
What's on the next agenda for you and the BJ and the Bear truck? What's the next?
I actually don't have really anything planned for it. And I think it may be time to move on from it, to be honest with you.
Right.
Talking to one of the previous owners of the Moving On truck, he described owning these trucks as being caretakers. That
Right.
you own it, but you're taking care of it until the next person. So now that my dad is no longer here, it's not quite the same. So, I think it may be time to let somebody else have a chance with it. But
Right. Let them feel the
yeah,
comfortability, the newness,
yep,
the excitement, the energy they can bring to it.
right.
You
Yep.
know,
I've gotten a lot of enjoyment out of it, especially all the stuff my dad and I did, because we did a lot of stuff together, and this was a big part of it. In fact, there were a lot of times we would do shows and things primarily because he wanted to go to them. He just, thought it was a good idea, and I went along with it, and it always worked out. We always had a good time, met some fantastic people over the years.
right.
So, but again, he's not here to help me out, and so maybe it's time.
Right. Exactly. Okay.
Well, so finally, Paul, if you ever get a chance, and you talk to Greg, I want you to tell him about Truckers Voices, but we would love to have him and you come on the show and do an interview. During this interview today, what would you say to him about the truck?
To Greg?
Yes, to Greg.
Oh, well, I mean, he's pretty familiar with it, now that since we've done several events with him. But so I don't really know we haven't seen him in quite a while. I think Reno. I actually made it to Reno and he was there. We just didn't have the truck there, but that's probably the last time I saw him. So I don't really know.
All right. Well,
real quick question. You talking about Reno when the motor grenaded on you? Kind of a personal question. How I know that's disheartening, but how was the reaction of the show people when they're really dependent on it? I mean, you can't help it. It's a piece of equipment. It's
right.
break down.
Yeah. I pretty much just spent the whole weekend explaining why there was a big empty piece of carpet there inside the building, and I had posters to sell, but no truck to take a picture in front of. But
right.
They were disappointed. But again, and that was a long trip. That's like 1,800 miles for us. And
right.
He had started out with plenty of time, and we tried, and it was over Memorial Day weekend, and so that was, it was a problem. And we tried up until even that Wednesday of that week, and it just was, the engine was shot. There's nothing we could do. Even hauling it wasn't. I had no resources to put that together in that short a time. So
right.
It was unfortunate.
And that probably would have been a pretty expensive record bill.
Yeah, it was way too far to tow. Yeah, if we'd have been within a few hundred miles, I would have had it towed in there, but
right.
we were in near Grand Island, Nebraska, so that was not an option.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Paul, thank you very much for coming on the show. We're going to have to cut to our next guest here, but if you want to stick around, you're welcome to stick around. We'll keep you on screen here. It's up to you.
All right. Well, I appreciate you guys. It's been a fun time.
Yes, sir. Paul, it's a pleasure meeting you, sir. And thank you for all the information in Madison. And thank you again for coming on and explaining to this. It brings back a lot of memories.
Yeah. That's why I do it. And my dad did it. It just, people get a kick out of it, and it's fun to relive their childhood.
Right. Exactly.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you, Paul. And we're going to bring on here our next guest, and Micha Larsen from Truckers Against Trafficking, mobile exhibit specialist. And he's going to come on here and talk to us a little bit about the Harriet Tubman Award that they're giving out. Micha has a bachelor's degree in theater arts at Grand Canyon University. He joined TAT in April of 2023. And whenever he's not traveling with TAT, he lives in Phoenix, Arizona, with his wife. So everybody, let's welcome Micha Larsen to the stage. Thank you, Micha.
Hey, thanks, guys. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for coming on. Appreciate
on. And we have, you can say hey to Paul here if you want to.
Hi, Paul. I was
Hi.
listening to you tell your stories and everything, and
Yeah.
I was smiling back here over in the backstage area.
Hey, Micah, if you don't mind me asking you, how old are you?
I am 26.
26. Do you know anything about the BJ and the Bear show?
No, I don't.
That was a setup question for sure, but
Yeah.
yeah, that was back in mine and Steve's era and Paul's era. There, we're all in our in our 50s. We're all around the same age. But growing up, we used to watch this show, and it's a trucking show called BJ and the Bear. Go check it out on YouTube sometime,
Yeah,
Mike.
will do.
That's what I was getting ready to say. When the show's over, he'll be watching YouTube of Bear getting caught up on it.
Good way to go into the 4th of July weekend, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So, Steve, I'm having some weather here. So if I cut out on you guys, Steve, you're going to have to pick it up, okay?
I can do it, sir.
All right, so let's go ahead and get started, Micah. Micah, explain what TAD is, in your position. Just kind of go into detail a little bit about your position there at TAD. Now, we know Laura Cyrus real good, and, they're good friends of ours. So tell them we said hi.
Absolutely. And actually, you said you asked about Laura the other day, and I had a phone call with her shortly after and said, "Hey, Tim says hi," and she was like, "Oh, I love that." So, yeah, that was awesome. But yeah, TAT, or Truckers Against Trafficking. I know you guys are familiar, but just for the audience, just in case they don't know, Truckers Against Trafficking is a 501c3 international nonprofit organization that is working to raise up and mobilize an army of transportation professionals whose primary goal is to aid law enforcement in the recognition and the reporting of the crime of human trafficking. So this, in essence, would help aid in the recovery of victims and then also help put perpetrators behind bars. So we provide all of our industry-specific training completely free of charge. We work within the trucking, the bus, the energy industry, but we also work with government agencies, law enforcement across the country, and all sorts of other different sectors. And then for what I do, so I'm TAT's mobile exhibit specialist, and basically what that means is that I work with one of our mobile exhibits, one of two, which is going to be coming near the end of the year. That one's in development. And the mobile exhibit that we currently have is called the Freedom Drivers Project. And that trailer is an interactive museum on human trafficking that travels around to different parts of the United States and Canada to bring more education and awareness on the realities of human trafficking, both not just to our partners, but also to the general public as well. So the inside of the trailer has actual artifacts from real survivors of human trafficking paired with their stories, and then other statistics on human trafficking, while also highlighting the work that we do with not just our partners, but the work that they're doing in all of their sectors as well.
Okay. What is the Harriet Tubman Award? Can you kind of give us some details and the explanation of that?
Yeah, so right now we're promoting this award, nominations for this award until the end of July. But the Harriet Tubman Award, it's a prestigious honor that we give out annually. And as I said, nominations, they're going to be closing at the end of July. At the end of July. So if anybody out there knows of any of the stories that I'm going to tell in just a couple of minutes, we want you to definitely head to our website and submit a nomination form. And I'll plug that website link at the end of my time here on your guys' show. But the award includes a $5,000 check, and it honors members of the trucking, bus, and energy industries whose actions have helped recover or improve the lives of victims or prevent human trafficking or sexual exploitation from taking place. When people talk about human trafficking, or whenever I go give a presentation, a question that I often get, and I think that is honestly a really fair question to ask, is how can we tell that anti-human trafficking training is working? And I think that's such a hard question to answer because human trafficking is such a complex crime. And I think that's it's a difficult question to give a straightforward answer to because of that. But awards like the Harriet Tubman Award are a constant example that the work that we do does in fact work. And not only does it work, but it has a lasting impact on people and helps save people's lives. And the proof is in our ability to be able to tell these stories through our presentations and on our websites and at events and stuff like that. So yeah, it's an award we give out to honor anybody who's done something that, has taken our training and had something happen as a result of that training by making a call.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So, would you mind telling us some of the stories of some of the past winners of the Harriet Tubman Award?
Yeah, absolutely. So I got two for you. The first one is going to be about two perpetrators named Laura Sorensen and Aldair Hadza. In January of 2015, Sorensen and Hadza had pulled their RV into a Virginia truck stop where police were quickly called to the scene. And when troopers were, when they asked to enter the vehicle, they immediately knew that something was just wrong. Both Sorensen and Hadza were almost giddy with law enforcement, over answering their questions, offering the officers cookies, and even insisting that they sit down and relax, which is definitely not normal behavior for somebody who's being investigated by the police. That's one of those red flags that we talk about in our training. And there was a third person in the RV at the time. She wasn't talking. Her hair was pulled up into a greasy bun up on top of her head. She was very pale and heavily made up with makeup. But most importantly, during all of this, she kept her eyes down and she wouldn't look anybody in the eye the entire time that law enforcement was in the vehicle. So at one point during the conversation, Sorensen and Hadza, they had ended up pointing out of the front of their RV to a local landmark that they said that they wanted to visit later that day. It was at that point that the young woman was able to look up while everybody's attention was focused out the window and make a face to the officer closest to her, signaling that she needed help. She was then removed from the RV, and when she got outside, that's when she began to tell the trooper her horrific story. Which is that she had been, she was a 20-year-old woman who had been kidnapped from her Iowa home by friends of her sister. She had been beaten and raped, and her entire body had been burned with instruments that were heated up on the RV's stovetop. She'd been branded, tortured, and at one point she had even managed to get away until Sorensen and Hadza had actually tracked her down and then jammed nails into her feet so that she wouldn't be able to run away again. They were selling her through Craigslist ads that they were posting of her, and then men were coming out to the RV and raping her. She hadn't eaten in a week. She could not remember the last time that she had had anything to drink. And then at that point, she felt that she were going to die, and that's what she told the trooper. And doctors said that if that call to law enforcement had not been made that day, that she would have died due to the malnutrition and the torture that she had suffered. The driver who ended up calling was Kevin Kimmel, who had noticed that something about the RV was not making sense. He had noticed a young woman's head pop out of the back and felt that she had been yanked away from the curtains, and then the curtains were drawn, and kind of deliberated. And he had had the training before and thought, you know what, it just doesn't feel right to me. I'm going to call law enforcement. And they came out, and she was able to make a full recovery, and she's now at home with her family, getting the care and the support that she needs. And so he was one of our winners. And then the other winner that I've got is a man named Joe Aguayo, who was a professional food truck driver for Winco Foods. And he was driving in an area of the country on one of his routes that was known for its natural hot springs and its lack of cell phone service. And as he was rounding the curve, he saw something that he knew was wrong right away. He witnessed a young woman whose head was completely shaved. She was looking up at the mountains as if she had no idea where she was, and the only thing that she was wearing was a beach towel. So all those context clues that Joe had seen, he clearly knew something wasn't right. And so while adhering to his strict company's policy of no unapproved riders in the cab, he did the right thing and kept driving for about 1.5 miles until he saw the next roadside police call box, pulled over, called law enforcement, gave his description of the young lady, and told him his location and everything like that, and then went on his way. And then fast forward a couple months, Joe ended up actually driving the same route again and ended up having a weather-related accident on that route. And as he was conversing with law enforcement as they were helping him on the scene, he thought to ask, I should check in about that call that I had made a couple months prior. And to his surprise, the law enforcement officer that was aiding him with his weather-related accident had ended up actually being the officer that had responded to his call all those months ago. And they were both kind of shocked to be reunited with each other. And he had said that when he had found the young woman, she was in really rough shape, and they had to take her to the hospital. And it turns out she was a 27-year-old indigenous victim of human trafficking who had been drugged and then dumped in that area. But she also was able to make a full recovery, and she's back at home with her family getting the help and care that she needs. And so it was because of Joe's actions that we were very proud to name him our 2023 Harriet Tubman Award winner. So those are stories, right? As I mentioned, it's one of those hard questions that gets asked of like, well, how many people have you saved? How many people have, been removed from the life of human trafficking? And it's just because it's such a global problem and it happens all over the world. A statistics that I like to say is that there are an estimated 50 million victims of human trafficking around the globe annually. And at the same time, human trafficking is a $236 billion industry every single year. So that's a big gap, right? And so that makes it a very complex crime to track when it's happening at that large scale all over the globe. But that's why I really like these stories and finding these nominations and having TAC give out this award, because it's a great example of this works. People should pay attention to this. And that's one of the reasons that we work within the trucking industry, is because they take matters like this personally. They, as an industry, I hear truckers all day long at events talk about safety first, safety first, safety first, right? This is one of those things. It's just another safety first, right? Taking care of the people around us in our communities and everything like that, noticing and paying attention to what's happening around us, and then making a simple phone call can lead to absolutely changing somebody's life.
Now, was these two drivers TAT trained?
Yeah, so both of them had received training and knew exactly what to do in those situations where it didn't feel right. Kevin, when he saw those red flags, he was like, based on the training that I have, I think this is one of those moments I need to call. And same with Joe. He had also had our training as well.
Okay. Now, how does somebody go about submitting an application for a nomination for an individual or themselves?
Yeah, great question. So yeah, if you know anybody, listeners out there, if you know of anybody who might have a story similar to Kevin or to Joe's, definitely talk to them about this award. And then we want you to direct them to www.tatnonprofit.org, which is our website, where you could submit a nomination form on there. And as I said, this nomination period is open until the end of July for our 2025 candidates. So we would love to see as many nominations as possible.
Okay. Now, where is this award presented at?
Right now, it currently does not have a location. Okay. We're working on that right now, but typically, in the past, we've driven to wherever, like last year's winner worked for a TA truck stop. And so we went and presented the award at one of their locations outside of that truck stop.
Nice.
Yeah.
So Micah, what does the award, like if we know somebody, we want to submit it for them, what could they expect to receive?
Yeah. So as I said, there's an actual trophy, and then there's going to be $5,000 check that'll come with that award. And right now that's all that we've got. So yeah.
I got you. So I always say this. I know Steve and myself, we're both TAT trained, and we're both ambassadors for Truckers Against Trafficking. But I do want to remind everybody that there is an app out there that you can download for your phone. And yep, Steve's holding it up there.
Awesome.
He's holding up that window sticker, right?
Yes, I got one in my truck.
Yep. And anyway, it only takes about 30 minutes to get TAT certified and trained. Yeah. And if you don't know what to look for, you don't know what to look for. But if you're TAT trained and you know the red flags that are out there, I would encourage every truck driver, bus driver, anybody that has anything to do with the transportation industry to become TAT trained, because it's happening in our backyard, folks. And, we need to be aware. Hey, you think about it. We are the eyes and ears of the highway. And there's over 3.6 million truck drivers in the United States. So that's a lot of eyes and ears out there. If everybody could become TAT trained, wow, what an army we would be, and we could really curtail this horrible crime of human trafficking. Micah, I do want to say thank you for coming on and sharing with us about the Harriet Tubman Award. We appreciate it. This show will air again tomorrow at 9 a.m., so we'll have it out there again at 9, and then of course we'll have it on all the platforms uploaded here pretty soon. But thank you very much, Micah.
Oh, thank you guys. It was an absolute pleasure being invited. Thanks so much.
Yes, thank you. Tell everybody back at TAT we said hello.
Yes, we'll do. I'll let them know.
everybody we said hello, and you guys do great work. You're at the Big Truck Show mats and a few other places I've seen y'all, and always meet new faces. And
Yes, sir. Yeah.
I just want to say to all the listening audience, these are some very ruthless people. They don't care about a human life. They beat it, they batter it, and then like the last story you just told, they took her out basically in the middle of nowhere in a forestry area and just dumped her with a beach towel. I mean, they don't care, and just keep them eyes and ears open, please. So thank you again. Appreciate it.
Oh yeah, of course. Anytime I can talk about the work that we do and get the word out there, and then even if it's just one driver who decides to take the training and get TAT certified, then it'll have been worth it. You thank me for the work that we do at TAT, and I do appreciate that. But the work that we do is not possible without drivers and folks like you who take the training. So appreciate you guys for what you do.
All right.
Yes, thank you. Well, we're going to have to end the show tonight, and this 1 hour has went by really fast. Paul, thank you for coming on and sharing with us, and we would love to have you back in the future. And happy 4th to you, Micah. Thank you again for coming on. Tat's always welcome on Truckers Voices for sure. I do apologize; it took a while for you and I to get together on and get a date down, but I'm glad we made it happen for sure.
No worries. Yeah, same over here. I was back and forth for a little while.
Yeah, right. All righty. Well, Steve, last words of safety and encouragement, brother.
Yes. Once again, thank you. You guys hang around just a little bit. When we close the show out, we'll talk to you real quick. Like I always say, remember, the most important trip is the trip home. Everybody, be safe this weekend.
Absolutely. Yep. Everybody's been traveling today, trying to get to their destination. And Mark, I hope everybody has a happy 4th. Got a special evening for you guys here on Truckers Voices in 2 weeks. 2 weeks. We don't have a show next week, but in 2 weeks we'll be right back, and we'll be right back on Truckers Voices. Y'all have a happy 4th.
Here's to the truckers hauling 18 wheels, and to the first responders in the fields, and to the farmer rising up at the crack of dawn, and to the soldier who's never really gone. It's all about the red, white, and blue. It's all about the things that we do for our country. It's all about you, and all about the red, white, and blue. It's all about the stars and the stripes, and everything that keeps us up at night. For our country, it's all about you, and all about the red, white, and blue. It's all about the red, white, and blue. It's all about the things that we do for our country. It's all about you, and all about the red, white, and blue. It's all about the red, white, and blue. It's all about the things that we do for our country. It's all about you, and all about the red, white, and blue. Oh. Here's to the truckers hauling 18 wheels, and to the first responders in the fields, and to the farmer rising up at the crack of dawn, and to the soldier who's never really gone. It's all about the red, white,